NFL continuing to make news. The latest proposal regarding amending the Rooney Rule was tabled, as you saw yesterday. And again, the response to it was enormous from all aspects of society, and understandably so, given the consequences. The end result will probably be good because it will result in more legitimate interviews of legitimate minority candidates who are clearly deserving of strong consideration to receive the jobs. We understand the dynamic in place right now. Only 4 of the 32 head coaching positions are occupied by minorities in the NFL, and only 2 minorities are general managers. Of course, the Rooney family, this is who it's named after. Of course, Art Rooney, a tremendous legacy in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. Dan Rooney as well. The family tree continues, and it is truly a great legacy and one that must continue to grow. And as we all know, sometimes what happens with regard to practice versus theory doesn't turn out exactly the way you like. And I think that's probably what most people would say about this, but it doesn't deter from the effort that's been made and continues to be made to try to amend this. A great read on this topic is called A Different Way to Win, Dan Rooney's story from the Super Bowl to the Rooney Rule. We advise that you check that out. It was an Amazon bestseller, and it was one of those books that clearly would be something that would give you tremendous information and the backstory and what led you to where we're at right now with regard to what's going on in the NFL and trying to amend the situation that currently exists. Joining us now to talk about that, speaking of the name Rooney, it's Jim Rooney who's with us. And Jim, listen, we appreciate the time. Welcome to the show.
Ken, it's great to be on. Happy to be here tonight and love speaking to folks down in New Orleans and throughout Louisiana, and I guess all over the country now that you're online.
Indeed, and first and foremost, the last name Rooney. Talk about the link that exists there between yourself and the Rooney Rule.
So my father, Dan Rooney, who, as you mentioned, is who the rule was named after. He was the Steelers' second president. My grandfather, Art Rooney, actually started the team in 1932, and my father came in and really drove the Steelers to what we like to be today. And we've had a lot of success since sort of him taking over, and both with the Steelers as well as with things in the National Football League. And we talk about the Rooney Rule. We talk about his work as the chief labor negotiator between NFL management and the Players Association. And my father actually was the United States ambassador to Ireland. President Obama named him U.S. ambassador to Ireland in 2009.
An amazingly accomplished man, someone that everyone admired. I'll never forget when the Steelers captured their first Super Bowl victory here in New Orleans at Tulane Stadium, 1974 season, and beat the Minnesota Vikings with Art receiving the Lombardi Trophy from Pete Rozelle, and how special a moment that was. I'm a Steelers fan, really always liked the Steelers. We're New Orleans Saints fans first and foremost, obviously, but the Steelers were a franchise that was easy to love. And in those days, when it came to the AFC, you either love the Steelers or the Raiders. Well, I love the Steelers. And, of course, Terry Bradshaw was the quarterback who's from Louisiana. And then the incredible number of Hall of Fame players, as it turned out, that were part of that franchise, with Chuck Noll being the coach. They were very easy to like. 4 Super Bowl championships, a tremendous legacy that Art, of course, left, and then subsequently Dan continued. And speaking of legacies, the Rooney Rule came into play in 2003. And as I stated earlier, there are so many things in life where the intent and what looks great on paper oftentimes doesn't turn out that way in practice, or at least not to the level we thought it was. And I think that's probably accurate here, too. And Art and Dan would probably say the same thing because the results haven't been as proficient as you hoped they would be. Would that be an accurate statement at this time?
Well, so absolutely. I think that my father, if he were alive, and both my brother, who's currently chairman of the diversity committee, and Commissioner Goodell acknowledged that yesterday, that these numbers, as you said, 4 coaches and 2 general managers, just aren't where we want them to be. I do think my father's contribution to this was significant. He really not only changed the conversation, in the NFL, but when you look back, it is the turning point in American industry where people really said, we're not making the grade at the C-suite, at the top executive level anywhere in corporate America. And in all those places, unfortunately, we still have a long way to go. But I think that really shifted the focus to mechanisms like the Rooney Rule. There's a rule in law called the Mansfield Rule that focuses on, promoting women lawyers that was modeled after the Rooney Rule. You see folks using it at Goldman Sachs and at Amazon. So I think he had a big impact in terms of how he changed the conversation, and then his efforts himself as being the champion of it. The first 15 years while he was alive, you did see significant increases throughout the league. Since then, you've had this dip, and we can talk a lot about why that is or what has happened. And I think some of the things you talked about, we passed a few things yesterday that I think are really good steps, and then a big piece was tabled, and I'm happy to go into more detail about that. But my father's contribution, I don't believe I'm just saying it because he's my father. I think anyone would recognize it was a step change in our attitude towards hiring minorities across corporate America.
Visiting with Jim Rooney and talking about the Rooney Rule, and mention the book, and we'll get into that too. But just to expound on what you just said, the one aspect was tabled. There was a lot of reaction to that. I talked about it on my shows and also wrote about it over the weekend, and we saw backlash from a lot of places that thought it smacked of pandering, or maybe it was, again, something that wasn't really received well by the African American community by and large. And then on the other hand, there's no doubt that it was the right effort to make. It's just a matter of how it was perceived. But what ended up happening was, and I'll let you take it from there, was now you're going to get more teeth in the Rooney Rule because now you're going to have more minority candidates interviewed that's mandated, correct?
Right. So what did get passed yesterday is first it used to be you just had to interview one minority candidate. Now there's two. And all of the evidence demonstrates that you just don't have an increase of a factor of one, but an exponential increase as much as 55% if there's more than one candidate in the pool, and there's a lot of science around nudging and the idea that you're changing the mindset of biases. So two in the pool is important. We've gone down to the pipeline. We've talked about the problems with the pipeline, the Eric Bieniemy situation, that we had one great candidate last year. We can talk about that specifics, but there really were no others, and there should be. And so what's going on with the pipeline? So coordinator jobs and assistant coaching jobs now have a Rooney Rule requirement, so there has to be minorities required in that. And then we did a couple things dealing with the way the contracts are structured so that there will be more mobility and folks won't feel like because they went and did an interview they would lose their job with their current team. So I think there were some big steps. The thing that wasn't passed or was tabled is this idea of some type of compensation for hiring a minority coach, and sort of got blowback on every side of that, and so can certainly appreciate that mechanism might not be the right mechanism, but all change, within any organization, if you look at change, there's either positive reinforcement or there's punishment, and usually positive reinforcement sustains a longer and greater change. So the idea was, how do you create a positive incentive for folks to be, going down this path? And so maybe that wasn't the right one, but I think it is important that we get there, because if you don't, the sham interviews that happen, you actually are incentivizing that behavior, because there's no major punishment involved, and there's no incentive to do something different. So I think it's really important that we create some incentive mechanism that will help folks, really drive these decisions, especially now that we've broadened it.
Jim Rooney visiting with us, talking about the Rooney Rule. And I wrote over the weekend, you mentioned Eric Bieniemy, and he's a New Orleans native, so it's very much applicable here. He's richly deserving. He's 50 years old now. He's had, 7 interviews, really 8 if you look at the record over the years, and he's not landed one of those jobs. And I would certainly say I understand that maybe 5 to 10 years ago, but it's hard to understand now given his quote-unquote skins on the wall. The other person that I mentioned in my story hits close to home for you and your family. From a general manager's perspective, I don't think there's any better candidate than Steelers Vice President Omar Khan, who's another New Orleans area native, and I happen to know him very well. And you talk about a rich resume and a terrific guy, by the way, and I'm sure you know that. And he's 43 years old, and he's interviewed for 3 general managers' jobs previously, and there was interest in him by 2 others, and hasn't landed one yet. He's a little younger at 43 than Bieniemy is, but to me, I don't think there's 2 better candidates out there than these guys. And I know Omar's worked with Kevin very well in Pittsburgh, but I think he's richly deserving. Just comment, if you will, on that.
Absolutely. So let me take a quick shot at both. Omar and I text each other every other day. So throughout this quarantine situation. So Omar's fantastic. But in terms of the Bieniemy situation, I mean, you couldn't be more right. Look, the Rooney Rule is about the interview process and trying to get that right. But there's another thing when people are hiring that I think good decisions are made on. My father hired 3 coaches in 50 years, so he was pretty good at that hiring coaches thing. And, part of it is the performance that you've seen someone successful. Eric's playoff run this year may have been the greatest run for a coordinator in NFL history. 10 points behind in all 3 playoff games, and he comes out ahead. And the game he called in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl might have been as good as any game plan I've ever seen. He used the running back, used all those stars as basically decoys, and that running back ran the ball down their throat, and they weren't expecting the inside run and then the outside run. They kept looking for Mahomes in the pass. It was just a fantastically called game. So that performance is something that should be rewarded, and it's frankly shocking that it wasn't. Omar is a different situation because the way we do things, Omar is involved in the scouting, but he's much more involved in the business side of things. And I think people put a little bit of we talk about other biases, but I think they want more scouting, which Omar understands football, I think, as well as anyone alive. I would prefer to have someone like Omar, looking after my money, someone who is sort of business first but understands football as thoroughly as he does. So we're certainly rooting for Omar, although I think he's shooting higher than GM. Omar wants to be the next commissioner of the National Football League, and I wouldn't be surprised if he were.
Well, that would be a pleasant occurrence as well. He's a terrific gentleman, and again, he's done a great job, and he goes about his business the right way, and he's just a pleasant guy. So everybody likes what he does. But those are just 2 examples because they happen to be.
And he married a Pittsburgh
natives.
girl, so he made a great decision.
Oh yeah. Well, we got a good mixed marriage there, New Orleans and Pittsburgh. I love it. So all good, and these guys are great. Now, talk a little bit about the book and how it came about, and the primary content, if you will, a different way to win. Dan Rooney's story from the Super Bowl to the Rooney Rule.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. So we try to tell this story about, answer the question, can you be a good person and win? And, there's plenty of examples where that didn't happen, but I think we showed throughout that my father, took on tough situations, had many failures. The Steelers were the worst team in football from 1932 to 1972. You can go on, but over and over again, everyone I talked to said, when I asked them, and I talked to about 50 different people, players, coaches, commissioners, folks from Ireland, the business community, and I said, what's the first thing you think of when you think of Dan Rooney? And they said, do the right thing. And I said, well, so what does that mean? And they said, well, it's that feeling in your gut that when you have a decision to make, you're not making it based on money, you're not based on reputation or what you're going to get out of it. You just have a feeling that you're helping the community, you're helping the organization, whatever the circumstances you're in, that you're making it beyond yourself, and that's what my father was all about, and that he managed, a team for 50 years that was pretty successful with that approach and the impact that he had on so many by doing that.
No doubt. Look, it's an amazing legacy that the family has left, and again, when you look at the hires, Chuck Noll, the incredible accomplishments that occurred under Coach Noll, who it's been documented was a different guy, his sensitivity to music, a good family man, and, with regard to his treatment of players and the way he got along with players, I think too much has been made about the relationship between he and the quarterback, who were both great at what they did and both good people. But if you talk to and listen to some of the thoughts and comments of the other players as part of that era, you get an incredibly good reaction. And then, of course, Bill Cowher, was a terrific hire, a personable guy, as hard-nosed as it got, universally respected. He's had a wonderful television career since he stepped away. And then Mike Tomlin, another universally respected guy who's liked by his players, liked by other coaches, and respected by other coaches. That's an awfully good legacy to have, and to have three guys that have won championships like that.
Right. So you stole my best points there on the book and my father's hiring. But Coach Noll is someone who, I've had 10,000 conversations in my life with Coach Noll. Never one of them was about football. It was always about other subjects. Coach Cowher, I've talked to him, 10 times over the last 3 or 4 weeks, and he's just paints this picture of he's living in New York City and what it's been like every night at I forget if it's 7 or 8 o'clock when they all go out on their balconies and clap for these frontline workers, and just how it's touched him, and what a passionate man he is, and I'd vote for him for president. When Bill Cowher walks in a room, he just changes the tone of the room. And then Mike, who is, again, been texting him some over the last couple of weeks, is just as real and authentic as you can get. And all three of them have very different personalities, but were all successful sort of under my father's vision, because that's what he wanted. He wanted people that were authentic. He had a vision for the organization, but he also wanted people to come in and make their own contribution to our culture. He felt like that would make the culture better. And so you had these three very different personalities, but they all fit perfectly because Dan Rooney sort of set the stage for people to come in, be themselves, know what the expectations were, but then be able to find their own way of meeting those expectations.
Current Steelers, a couple of minutes left with Jim Rooney, or an interesting study, Ben Roethlisberger coming back, which is huge. You can't possibly underestimate the importance of having him. I think the Steelers certainly found out about that last year, and how good he's been, and what a leader he's been of that organization, how much he grew up over the time he was there. And then, of course, the Steelers have had to deal with adversity as much as anybody over the last year and a half, not only losing Roethlisberger, the situation that occurred with the Browns last year, and then, of course, with what happened with Antonio Brown and what happened with Le'Veon Bell. I mean, this was as good an offense as there was in a league, and New Orleans fans know about that with the Saints and their offense, but things kind of came apart a little bit at the seams given the circumstances that were involved with these outstanding players. Just talk about that a little bit.
Well, I actually give my brother, Kevin Colbert, our general manager, and Mike Tomlin a tremendous amount of credit, because I've been around this business for more than 50 years like you can, and I've never seen so much turmoil. I think we're all learning what social media means and the impact it can have, and how these guys, and I certainly respect their right to communicate their views, but it really was sort of an amazing set of tidal waves over the last couple of years, and the fact that although we ended 8-8 last year, we were 8-5 at one point without a Hall of Fame quarterback, and just the steadiness of my brother's vision, Kevin at the helm, and then Mike coaching these guys, making sure they're ready each week. With a quarterback position, with losing, what I think is a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the National Football League. Now they all made some great decisions. I think our defense is really strong, and I'm really excited with that defense where we can go with a healthy Ben Roethlisberger. But their steadiness, and again, I'm selling this book, but it really speaks to what I talked about in that book. That my father always was about stability and continuity, and the last year really showed that.
No question. And a last point I'll make the point about that. It's any great organization is about the team. It's not about the individual. And Brown and Bell are terrific players, great talents, but when the individual becomes bigger than the team, it creates a bit of a distraction, and that's kind of how I viewed it as an outsider looking in.
Well, I'm glad we're at where we are right now, and as I said, I love our defense. I love what we're putting together on offense, and feel it's every year's a challenge, but I feel good about the challenge this year.
Well, the Rooney family has been just a blessing to the NFL and professional football in general. Continue to be that way. There's so much to be happy about. If you want to use the word proud, you should be, because that's a legacy your family's created. The book's called A Different Way to Win. Dan Rooney's story from the Super Bowl to the Rooney Rule. How can people still get the book, Jim?
So you can get hardback, paperback, and a digital copy on Kindle, all at Amazon. So if you go to Amazon, you can get the book. We're in stores, although I don't know nationally if I don't know if we're in New Orleans as much, but so Amazon is probably the best place to get it. I know you can get it online at Barnes and Noble and some of the other booksellers, but again, go to Amazon and get the book and enjoy reading it.
Well, it's been a distinct pleasure visiting with Jim Rooney this evening. Jim, thank you so much, and nothing but the best to your family, to yourself, and to the Steelers organization as well.
Ken, thanks for having me, and I hope everyone stays safe down there.
You bet. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate it. That's Jim Rooney. If you'd like to join in the conversation, 260-1061 is the number to call. A brief timeout. When we return, back-to-back award-winning coaches that deserve great recognition. A little bit later on, LaKenya Reed of Booker T. Washington will join us. But coming up next, Nick Monica of Archbishop Rummel, state champion in football, will join us as we continue with more of All Access for a Wednesday night. Ken Trahan with you here on 106.1 FM Nash Icon. We're on the web at NashFM1061.com.
O'Reilly. This is Derek's O'Reilly Auto Parts story.
After the third time jump-starting my car, I finally realized my battery was dying. So I stopped by O'Reilly to have it checked. They tested it right there in the parking lot. It was bad, real bad. But they helped me find the right battery for my car and even installed it for free. Now my car starts like new.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Hi, this is Jay Farner, CEO of Rocket Mortgage. Making the right financial decisions has never been more important. We can help guide you to those right decisions now, when they matter most. Mortgage rates are near historic lows, so when you call 8338-ROCKET or visit us at rocketmortgage.com to start your refinance, you'll be well on your way to saving money every month. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 3.375%, APR 3.59%. Right now could be a great time for you to take some positive financial steps forward with a cash-out refinance from Rocket Mortgage, which could give you the boost that you're looking for. In addition, we may be able to help you refinance with little or no out-of-pocket costs. At Rocket Mortgage, we're committed to every client, every time, no exceptions, no excuses, giving you the best mortgage experience. Call us today at 8338-ROCKET or go to rocketmortgage.com to learn more.
Rates subject to change. Pay 1.875% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
If you like pina coladas and getting cold.
Spilled your pina colada? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills and messes quicker and is 2 times more absorbent than the leading Ordinary brand. So you can get back to getting caught in the rain.
If you like pina coladas,
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Every home has have-to-dos and probably some want-to-dos. The Home Depot can help you do both with the things you need to make things work a little better or take care of something you've been meaning to do. Maybe do something to start summer. We have the low prices to make it all doable. Order online and get free delivery on orders over $45. Whatever you need to do or want to do, we can help you get it done. The Home Depot. How doers get more done. Some delivery exclusions apply.
Now's the time. What's on your mind? Time to express your thoughts by calling Ken Trahan of CrescentCitySports.com and All Access on 106.1 Nash Icon and at Nash1061.com. Call 260-1061.
So great accomplishments this past school year with regard to high school athletics, and they're being recognized even though some of the seasons were cut short, unfortunately, due to COVID-19, which we, of course, have talked about ad nauseum and, frankly, are tired of talking about. The good news is most not all, but certainly most of the high school sports were able to be completed, and that was certainly something that we all enjoyed and appreciated. In the process, a lot of great accomplishments took place. Coming up later in the show, LaKenya Reed of Booker T. Washington High School will join us, the 3A state champions in girls basketball, and a tremendous story, by the way, and you'll get to hear about that coming up. But right now, another great story. In prep football this past year, Archbishop Rummel went 13-0, captured the Division I state championship, just one of the great defenses in Louisiana prep sports history, and that's not overstating the case, having watched them play on a regular basis. Joining us now is a pretty good story himself, the head coach of the Rummel Raiders, and he did this in his first year on the job as head coach, Nick Monica. Nick, listen, great to have you with us, and welcome to the show. Congratulations, and I hope you're well in these unusual times.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Kenny. Just a lot of uncertainty right now, and everybody's bored, and we're ready to get back to work, so hopefully it clears up pretty soon.
Well, of course, the All-State Sugar Bowl, which I'm part of that, and the Greater New Orleans Boys Prep Coach of the Year award forthcoming. The release going out yesterday that you're named to this, and first of all, it's a great award because it encompasses every sport there is. It's not just one sport, so there's so many accomplished coaches that were part of this mix, and from that perspective, I know you're grateful and you appreciate it. Correct?
Yeah, it's a huge honor. I think you just touched on it. You know, the number of great coaches that we have in the city, in this area, and not just in football, but all sports included. It's it's a pretty large group of people, and the college guys that come around all the time just continuously compliment the area and the coaches in Louisiana, and so it's a huge honor to be at the top of that list.
Well, I think you're a unique person, and you were put in a unique position because the position you took was not one that a lot of people could have handled extremely well and with grace and accomplished what you accomplished. No doubt you had good players, but you took over for, in my mind, the most legendary person in the history of athletics at Archbishop Rummel, and Jay Roth, who, of course, hired you to coach there and then pushed very hard to get you promoted to his job. And number one, he's a great guy, and he's been very appreciative and supportive of you. But number two, it's not easy to walk into a situation like that and succeed a guy like that. And I know that a lot of people told you that, including your dad, right?
Yeah, correct. Jay's been a huge part of me staying there for 15 years, and I wouldn't have taken the job had it not been for him and the way that he sold it and felt so strongly about the move, and so he was a big part of that, and just like you said, I mean, the whole adage of replacing a legend, and I think my dad would have voted against it, but it's like I said, Jay sold it, and he carried his thoughts up to the principal, and he felt strongly, just as strongly as Jay did, and so the three of us just thought it was the right thing to do and the best thing for my family, and I'm glad it worked out year one.
It was obviously the right thing to do, and the thing about it is, it's a great school. I know a little bit about it, and it's a great job too, and that job would have been one that the whole state would have been interested in, I would imagine, despite the fact that they would be succeeding Jay. So I know that you completely understand that, because for people that don't know, Nick has been at Rummel since 2006. I mean, he's been there for a long time. So if anybody understands the landscape of that fine school, it's Nick Monica.
Yeah, it's been it's as proud of a program as it is, and a school, and with their tradition, and it's actually an honor. Somebody pointed this out to me, but I've been able to be a part of all of the, not just the state championship teams in the history of football program, but even the ones that were able to make it to the Dome the first time there, and it's just been a huge honor, and to be a part of only the second undefeated team in the history of the school with all the success it's had. It's a proud accomplishment.
Visiting with Nick Monica of Archbishop Rummel, who will receive the All-State Sugar Bowl Greater New Orleans Boys Prep Coach of the Year on the heels of receiving the same award from the Greater New Orleans